Thank you, everybody, for your timeliness and being on the call. So today we're going to talk about cognitive behavioral model. Now, some of you might think, well, wait a minute, we talked about that last week some. Well, we did. We did touch base on this model a little bit last week. However, last week we really focused on a different model that was called concept therapy, and it was by Dr. Thurman Fleet. And so you all got to see my little artwork with the round head with a line in between, and we talked about conscious mind and subconscious mind. And then we did actually touch base a little bit in the cognitive behavioral model. But the importance of last week was so that we understand thoroughly the difference between conscious and subconscious mind. And the cognitive behavioral model, which we'll talk about today, is kind of an extension to that, and it goes in a little bit more detail in some areas. And we are going to talk about, towards the end of this, we're going to look at what I like to call thought filters, healthy thought filters and unhealthy thought filters. And this is where the meat of this comes from. And we can use this. There's a chart, too, in your handout that will show the unhealthy thought filters and healthy thought filters. You can actually use this printout as you sit down with somebody to coach them. So we'll get more into that in a few minutes. So cognitive behavioral model. It's how we think. Have you ever felt like life is out of control? Or have you felt like you have no choices in what happens next? Now, I think the answers, if you're all honest, would be yes, of course we feel like that. We feel like that more often than what we would like to, or what we would like to admit. And so this presentation is so that we can better understand why it is that we feel like we have no choice. We always have a choice, but we don't always feel like we have a choice. And to find out why we feel like we're out of control. And so that's what we're going to tackle today. It's a really big topic, so it's really important. I will say, too, this cognitive behavioral model, this is universal. It's everywhere. Pretty much every psychologist, sociologist, coach, anybody, really any athletic coach, personal trainer, uses this to some degree in order to help people think better, to drive better behavior, which drives better results. This is really it. This is the foundation. But I find that just in going through life, many people don't really know this very well. In fact, I'll say that most people that we're going to coach isn't going to know much about this. They'll know certain parts of it, but they're not going to get the concept, and they're not going to be able to understand it and start thinking better until somebody can help them think better. And this model is probably the best out there. So we'll get going on this. All right, so the first section of the model is situation. So we all have different circumstances or a different environment or culture that we live in, all of us. Our circumstances might be, it might be a relational status with somebody. That relationship might be going really well or not so well. It could be your financial circumstances. It could be your political environment. It could be what's going on in your culture. Maybe it's what you see on the news every day. That certainly describes a little bit of your culture, not necessarily accurately, but it does give you some input on your culture and your circumstances, at least on a big stage. Your situation could also just be how you're feeling that day. Are you in a good mood or you're in a bad mood? Whatever your situation is. And so we all have situations, small situations, big situations, long-term, short-term, right now, and so on. And it's important that we understand our situations well if we're gonna think well. All right. So the second section here of the cognitive behavioral model is our automatic thoughts. Our automatic thoughts, basically, this is your subconscious belief about your situation. Your subconscious belief about your situation. So whatever your situation is, this is your automatic thoughts about this. Okay. So you can have really good automatic thoughts about a circumstance that's healthy and can lead you down the right path, or you can have really bad thoughts about your circumstances or environment that can lead you down the wrong path. So the third section is emotional reaction. This is our feelings and assumptions. This is the emotion behind everything that we do. When you think about it, everything that we do comes from an emotion. Whether we do something during our free time or we lay around and do nothing has everything to do with how we feel. If we feel like we don't want to do anything, we're not going to have any motivation. If we feel like we've got to get something done, then we'll do it. Our reactions will follow that. And so our behavior is the next section, and this is what follows our emotions. It always follows our emotions, good or bad, it follows. Not everybody believes that necessarily, but that's why this model exists, so that we can correct some thinking and help people understand how our emotions, how our hearts, how our brains really do work. So our behavior is the actions that we are moved to take, prompted by our feelings. So that's important to know that. We can be very highly motivated or lowly motivated, and behavior will always follow our emotional reaction. And then the last section here is results. This is what happens along this is what happens after you've looked at your situation, created an emotional reaction, changed your behavior, or kept your behavior going. This is what happens due to that. If your situation is a very tough situation, maybe it's a very chaotic situation, your automatic thoughts might be to freak out. Your emotional reaction would be the feelings that you get from that, and your behavior might be that you panic, and the results might be that you blow it. It could be just the opposite of that. Your situation could be that you have a very favorable situation, so your automatic thoughts are all about joy and happiness, and your emotional reaction is to be warm and fuzzy, and your behavior is to be nice to everybody around you because you're in a great mood, and your results would be that you might make some more friends and make a connection. So this is the model. This is how this works. So we're going to talk through it a little bit more. And then, of course, your results always will affect your situation. So your situation can get better or it can get worse, depending on how you go through this model. And that's important to know. All right. So we're going to spend the rest of our time here really looking at this automatic thoughts section. We're not going to talk about situation as much, or emotional reaction, or behavioral results. We're going to talk about automatic thoughts, because this is the key to all of the rest. This is it. This is the central piece. If you can get this, then you'll understand the cognitive behavioral model, and you'll understand much better how to coach other people and coach yourself. So this is important. So our automatic thoughts is our subconscious belief about the situation. So let's dig in to automatic thoughts. All right. Our automatic thoughts always come from our situation, and they always lead to our feelings. Sometimes people think, or some people think, that our circumstances cause our feelings. So it's really natural to want to skip over this automatic thoughts and just go right to our feelings. Something took place, and I felt this way about it. That's what we think. We think that the circumstances is the cause to our feelings. Now, that's a very passive way to think, because what you're doing is you're not taking responsibility for your thoughts. You're saying that the responsibility falls on the circumstance rather than your thoughts. So you can see how automatic thoughts, if we can't change these automatic thoughts and have some kind of responsibility for our thoughts and control over our thoughts, then we're really not being responsible for our own brain, for our own thoughts. We're leaving that responsibility to someone else or some other circumstances. We're being brainwashed by the culture, or we're being talked into something by someone else. We're being manipulated by a person that wants something from you, or whatever it might be. And our feelings seem to be following circumstances, but they're really not. They're following your thoughts about the circumstances. All right, let's keep moving. So how can we replace our automatic thoughts with new healthy thoughts? that's really the question of the day. How can we replace our automatic thoughts with new healthy thoughts? Some people might think you can't. Well, you can. That goes back to our to last week, our cognitive thinking ability, or our conscious minds. And the answer to this is by seeking to understand our thoughts. So when you think about it, if you're going to seek to understand something, it means that you have to be observant. You have to observe something. If you're going to seek to understand any culture, you have to observe the culture. If you want to seek to understand how a machine works, you need to observe the machine, pay attention to, and look how one thing leads to another. And so if we're going to understand our thoughts, we need to seek to understand our thoughts. But we can't be in our own head when we do that. We have to be able to figure out how to look at ourselves from a third-party perspective. We have to be able to look at ourselves and evaluate how we're thinking from an objective perspective, not a subjective perspective. If you're always looking at the world through your own goggles, you're always going to see the world from a selfish perspective. And so by drawing ourselves out and being able to observe our thoughts, this is how we're going to be able to replace some of our thoughts with new and healthy thoughts. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, more about automatic thoughts. So our automatic thoughts are developed by our subconscious mind. We know that from last week. They're developed by our subconscious mind. Our subconsciousness, our subconscious beliefs are developed by a combination of upbringing and family values, media and cultural input, personal experience, education and knowledge, success or failure. And we talked about that when we discussed inputs last week. And so our subconscious is programmed by those inputs. And here's a very important part to understand about our subconscious. Our subconscious mind always looks back at the past, what we've already known, and what we've experienced. It always looks backward. It's developed and it's programmed by your past and what you've already experienced. So your subconscious this is what we talked about as being autopilot last week. Your subconscious is always based on your past. That means it's not innovative. It can't think outside the box because your subconscious mind is all about inside the box. You just can't do it. So that goes to show that if we just always kick back and rely on our subconscious mind to just drive our lives wherever we go, we're never going to really move forward. We're going to stay the same, and we're going to keep assuming the same things from the past that we've learned from the past, whether those are good things or bad things. They could be really dysfunctional thoughts. They could be lies. They could be foundationally superb things to believe. It could just be truth. You believe a lot of truth from the past, or you believe a lot of lies from the past. Just your subconscious is a hodgepodge of all of that. The idea is to make it better, though, not just to stay the same. Okay.